Hey everybody, it's Kat, and I want to welcome you to this episode of Backstory Sessions. I'm joined today by my co-host Willie. Hey Willie,
Hi, Kat.
we have an exciting guest with us today. We have Bill McCann. He is the author of Yearnings, and that's a memoir in prose and poetry. He's going to take us back to a time before special education laws when families had to send children away and pay out of pocket just so they could learn. And the book is through letters, history, Japanese style poetry. He shares what life was like as a child in one of the first residential schools for differently abled students. So, Bill, welcome. We look forward to hearing about your journey and about your book, Yearnings.
Thank you very much, Kat. I'm glad to be here.
Wonderful. So, let's start with the heart of this book. What made you decide it was time to tell this story publicly?
I've been trying to tell it for a long time. I have a master's degree in theater. And one reason that I have that is that I decided at the age of 55 that I needed to tell my story. And I thought that since I had been writing plays for a while and doing other things, I would try and tell the story on the stage. Well, it didn't work. I got the degree in theater and I learned how to write plays. But I could not figure out a way to tell my story on the stage. So fast forward another 10 years or so. I'm now 65 and I'm ready to retire. It's the middle of the pandemic. It's 6 months into it, and I was worried that I was teaching at BCTC, Bluegrass Community and Technical College in Lexington. And I was afraid that I might get COVID and take it home to my wife, who had some serious issues in terms of her health. So I didn't want to do that. So I retired. And then I discovered that I could go back to school at no cost, no tuition cost at least, to any of the public universities in the state. And so I did. I decided I would try and get a degree. Well, actually, I didn't try to get a degree. I just wanted to take some courses at Eastern Kentucky University, and I enrolled and I took a class in literacies. And literacies are how one learns to talk, read, write within a discipline. And of course, my interest was in telling my story as a child. I had been sent away at the age of 6 to school in Racine, Wisconsin, because I had severe learning difficulties, mental, physical, educational. I was just, I was a mess. So um, my parents were able to find a school that could help me, or at least they hoped they could help me. And off I went to Wisconsin, 500 miles from Lexington, Kentucky, where I had grown up until that time. And here I am today. It worked, but it was a long stretch, and I finally figured out after taking that course in literacies that I had a way to tell my story. I didn't really want to spend 10 years getting a doctorate in education or English or any other subject. So uh, I thought, well, I'll try doing it in creative writing and creative nonfiction. So I switched programs, and the rest is history. I wrote Yearnings, a memoir in prose and poetry using Japanese poetry and Japanese styles of prose. And here we are.
Well, so obviously, it is a fascinating just to hear you tell the premise of it. But so you're 6 years old when this happens. What were some like before that, growing up, like what were some challenges that you had, or what was the first sign that maybe you were not going to be going to public school?
Well, when I was 3 years old, 3 years and 9 months old, I fell. And a couple of weeks later, and we're not sure that the fall had anything to do with it, but a couple of weeks later, I developed epilepsy. And the epilepsy was very hard to control. So they put me on lots and lots of medication, um, high doses of medication. And that created other problems. I was drooling. I was basically unable to walk because I would fall down. I had three types of seizures. I had absence seizures, um, grand mal seizures, and petit mal seizures, all basically one right after the other, almost on a continual basis, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it was awful, I'm sure, for my parents. I don't have any memory of that. I'm very fortunate. I don't remember that, but it was bad enough that my parents put me in a football helmet to protect me from when I was falling. And so things went along until I was 5 years old, and it was time to send me to kindergarten, which was a new thing in Lexington. And my parents wanted me to have a good education, so they were going to send me to kindergarten. At the time, Lexington was a pretty small town, maybe 30,000 people, 35,000, 1950. Let's see, that would be 1959. And so off they sent me, and very quickly they would get phone calls from the various kindergartens saying, "We can't have him in. We can't have him. We can't help him. He's too disruptive to the class." And so
Mm.
my parents were left looking for a place to send me to school. And I came around to the age of 6 in the fall of 1961. And they discovered late that fall, early in January of the following year, 1962, that a place called the Cove Schools in Racine, Wisconsin existed. And there was also another Cove School in Evanston, Illinois. And they inquired about what services were available, what they could do for me. And off I went. In March of 1962, I was sent to Racine, Wisconsin, to the Cove School.
So, were the seizures still happening, or did those get somewhat under control before
Those
you
got
went?
they got those under control within about 6 months after I started having the first one.
Okay.
So that would have been in the fall of 1961. But I was on medication continuously until I was 9 years old. So about 5 years I was on very heavy medication, which made me have great difficulty walking and talking. Um, I was drooling constantly. Uh, I stumbled and fell a lot. Um, I was lucky that the seizures were controlled, but the results were pretty awful.
Yeah. Well, so the Cove School, I mean, you're 6 years old. Um, your parents, I'm guessing they don't get to stay with you. And what what's going through your mind at 6 when you are sent away, I guess?
Well, I don't know what was going through my mind. I don't remember that real well. I do remember the first events. Um, my parents were on the way to Racine. They were going to take me up there. They were going to drop me off. I don't remember being scared of that or anything, but I do remember that I was at a point in my life where it's hard to say this, a point in my life. I'm 6 years old, but
Mm.
I was really um, I was sick as a dog when they first took me up there. I had some sort of cold or the flu or something, and I was miserable, wrapped up in a blanket. The car was warm, but even with that, I was wrapped up in a blanket. And they carried me in, put me down on the bed, and went off and talked to folks there at the school. Came back a few hours later, or it could have been a few minutes later. I fell asleep. I don't know. And that was the beginning of it. And I don't know why, but I don't remember ever being scared. I probably was. I don't remember ever being homesick. I probably was. Uh, but it turned out to be the absolutely perfect place for me. Let me uh, let me read you one of these first poems at the beginning of the book.
Okay.
It's called "The Cove Schools: My Life." And the Cove Schools was a big, huge building that was about three blocks long. About two of those blocks were where a convent of nuns was cloistered, and I never saw them. But anyway, so we were in one third of the building, they were in the other two-thirds of the building, and it says the Cove School of My Life. The Gothic-styled school building on Lake Michigan was near a beach where fog and snow could wade ashore and sometimes peer into my room. We were from east and west, north and south. Sally's plastic horses roamed her dresser top. Steve's mind roamed from weather to stamps to chess and more. David's remote-controlled red sports car with gull-wing doors was crashed and trashed. One boy claimed to be the Lone Ranger's nephew. Dougie wore two hearing aids, turned up full, and still couldn't hear. Joe's shortwave radio allowed us to listen to McHale's Navy once. Susan liked the little train game. Steve, Joe, Tommy, David, and I were roommates. Another student bragged that his backyard had a gold mine. Tommy knew about hurricanes and told us about living through some. Steve knew about isobars and could explain hurricanes. Jamie, Seth, Steve, Tommy, and I were all in the same Cub Scout den. On school days, we watched Bozo the Clown at noon. But once it wasn't funny. The president died in Dallas that day. A few days later, we watched the president's young son salute his dad's casket as that son's sister walked sadly on beside their mother. For fun, we rode sleds, had snowball fights, played flashlight tag, and 50 all scatter. We flew kites, searched for sea glass, dug holes, played basketball, and had fun. On TV were Flipper, I Dream of Jeannie, Mr. Magoo, and Walt Disney, too. We screamed for the Beatles and our favorite teams, Packers and Cubs. We visited museums and zoos and petrifying springs, too. But perhaps most of all, we students had each other. Steve, Joe, and I stayed up late to play games or talk or sing, listen to the Cubs or Packers games while others slept. Early in the morning, we'd rise and talk and dream before we'd dine. We spoke of college and careers even as our teachers and parents wondered if we were bright enough to change a light bulb. College for us was a given. Though the adults we knew, unknown to us, believed we'd be lucky to live in a workshop setting, certainly they did not believe we'd live on our own. I developed and lived up to my abilities. I'd like to think that my friends did too.
Aw,
Wow.
wow.
So Willie, what's your response to that?
Well, I like that. Uh, so you found it easy to make friends?
I think most 6-year-olds can find a way to make friends pretty easily. Uh, I've certainly observed enough of them in my life to know that some kids are always on the outs and never really accepted. But for most kids, I think they make friends pretty easily, and I did too, certainly, at least in that setting.
Well, and so everybody in the school had some kind of disability or
Yes,
a little something.
yeah. Most of them would would be what we would call probably behavior, having behavioral difficulties. But we were also having trouble with learning, the basics of writing, of how to comport ourselves in school. Behavior was always an issue. There are lots of discussions in the book about how I was behaving or failing to behave. Um, the problems that we had as children learning how to read and write. Let me see here. Um, excuse me. Um, okay, so let's see. Yeah. Okay. This is June 5th, 1963. An academic report, Bill McCann. Arithmetic. Bill counts and writes the numbers by ones from 1 to 30. He has some difficulty putting in missing numbers, especially if it is the number before. Bill has the dot configurations from 1 to 6 well established in his mind. Beyond the 6 pattern, I'm not sure how well he knows them. Visualizing the dot patterns on his desk is very difficult for him. The combinations made from these patterns are not firmly established. Writing. He is doing very well in writing. The X and Z are the only lowercase letters he is unsure of. And yet, he has learned no capitals. Connecting an O to another letter gives him some trouble. He writes from a copy. Bill is a good worker. He stays at his work until it is finished. Even though he may have some trouble, he never gets discouraged. Sometimes he copies the actions or repeats things he hears or sees, but generally can be quieted in a short time. Otherwise, Bill is relatively quiet in the classroom. Mrs. Schwager. So there are a lot of those sorts of things in the book where the teachers are describing my behavior, my abilities, and the learning styles that they are incorporating, the techniques they are using as teachers. So I think it gives some good insights into what early learning is like in a special education classroom. And this was before there was special education generally. At the time I was sent to the Cove School, there was no special education in Kentucky. I don't think there was anywhere else, quite frankly, except in Racine, Wisconsin, where I went, and also in Evanston, Illinois, where they had a separate secondary school. That school was for children, as was mine, of children between the ages of 6 and 12. And that was a day school. Kids went home at night. I was at the residential school and I stayed there basically 10 months a year.
Wow.
So, um, did I understand correctly that it seemed, at least from your perspective, that there wasn't a high expectation that you would, achieve at a high level?
Uh, Honestly, and my parents told me this much, much later, they had no expectations at all. They were hopeful that the school would be able to help me. They were not certain that I would be able to graduate high school. Heck, they weren't even certain I'd be able to come home and graduate from what is now middle school.
Wow.
That's interesting.
It is.
So did that ever change while you were there? Like, were you doing well or making progress enough that they maybe saw something that was an indicator you might be able to do this?
They did, I think. When I got there, my IQ was 62. When I left, it was 66. So
Not
I
a
didn't
big
I didn't do I
increase.
didn't do well on the IQ tests, and but still there was some reason for hope. And let's see if I can find something about that. Oh, shoot. I'm not really finding anything very quickly here.
So, while you're looking for that, why the Japanese style poetry when you decided to write this? What was it about that that you thought would help you capture your childhood experience?
That's a really good question. Thank you. What I really liked about, I didn't know anything about poetry. I took my first poetry class because I couldn't get into a creative nonfiction class. I mean, that's all it was. It wasn't for any other reason. I didn't know anything about poetry. I'd read poetry all my life. I liked it, but I didn't know anything about it. I couldn't have told you anything about rhyme schemes and can't really tell you a whole lot about them now. Um, but I took this class and we talked about um, we talked about the Japanese prose style, and then we talked about and you can write poetry as prose, of course, as prose poetry is pretty common. And so I thought, well, I'll use this Japanese style, which puts everything basically in a single column, in a single space. It looks very compact and appears on the page very nicely, but it doesn't give you any hints. You don't put, if you have a letterhead, you don't put the letterhead in. You just put the information that's in the letterhead, and then you go down and you take out part of what's in the remainder, and it just appears as blocks of uh, words on the page. So that was the first thing, and then there was haiku, and haiku has a standard sort of 5 7 5 syllable approach. Both of them typically in Japanese deal with issues of nature or travel logs. Particularly the haiku is tends to be just nature. I used them to help tell the story though, and I also used the haibun, which is the formal words for the descriptive prose. And so, okay, here, this is what my mother said about me in 1959. Well, she's relating about what happened in 1959. 1959, falling down. In March 1959, when Bill Jr. fell, I distinctly remember that it happened between the downstairs bathroom and our den and extra bedroom on St. Matilda Drive. And I think he was running, but maybe not. But I know I was standing in the dining room and witnessed what I at first thought was a fall. It was a seizure. Perhaps a week later, I'm not certain, I remember Bill Jr. being in the hospital in Louisville, and I spent the night with him. And at that time, I believe it was nighttime, Bill was at home with Laura. That's my younger sister. And I remember that Dr. Roseman came in and told me the news about the type of seizures that Bill was experiencing. He was very abrupt, and I was up practically the rest of the night, crying, praying, and just generally beside myself with fear, anxiety, and grief. Bill had many grand mal seizures after the first one. I was with him daily. We didn't have extra help at the time. And he had combinations of all three seizures constantly, even sitting right next to him, usually while he was on the floor, since he couldn't walk with any ability to not fall. I still couldn't keep him from falling. And we, for some reason, maybe because hadn't been suggested to us, did not put him in a football helmet until October or November 1959. The football helmet had a face guard. So that's the haibun. And then the haiku that follows it is, our sun rose the sun, bright delight no more, many problems ahead. So that combination is what I tried to use to help move the story along and help people understand what I was going through without having to read through hundreds of pages of official verbiage. And so that's how I worked it. That's how I put it together.
Well, it seems to be very effective to do it that way, and to move the story along as you were saying. Because I imagine that there were many like records and letters and photos and medical
There is.
records and like all kinds of things to go through.
Yes,
Um,
there were hundreds of pages of all this.
so how did you feel like revisiting the material? Did it stir up? I imagine it would have to stir some emotions.
Oh, it did. And it still does. And I can read that my mother said, she died in 2018. And I hear that in her voice now, what she said. It brings tears to my eyes even now to
Yeah.
know that she was put through so much. And 1959 was really a horrible year for the family. Um, that was the year that I had my first seizure. My sister Laura is 2 years younger than I am. So she was 2 years old. I was roughly 4 years old. And my father was trying to make a living as a lawyer. He was trying to provide information, figure out a way to help me. Mom was at home constantly with Laura and I both. And then it turns out that she was pregnant. She got pregnant, and uh, that would have happened if I fell in late February, early March. She probably found out that she was pregnant in mid to late March.
Mhm.
And in December 13th, she had a miscarriage. And I have to believe that it's not my fault. It's not Laura's fault. It's not anybody's fault, except that the stress had to be part of the reason she had her. I've always been convinced that that was part of the reason she had the miscarriage. So 1959 was not a good year.
Well, that's a lot to it's a big burden to feel like that your condition that you had no control over, and she really had no control over how stressful that would be because you're her child. That's a lot to think it contributed, whether it did or didn't, just to feel that way is a lot.
Yes, it is.
Um, so there's a letter in the book where young Bill writes a home about his day. Um, like when you read childhood words now, like what strikes you about the kind of writer that you were then?
Oh, I wasn't a very good writer at all. Uh, there's only one letter in there that I think even indicates any hope for me as a writer. And that's the one um, very shortly after I was there. Uh, we took regular field trips. The school took regular field trips. There were only 24 of us at the school. So a big yellow school bus was borrowed from the local public education folks. And so this was April 11th, 1962. Dear Mommy and Daddy, we got up early yesterday morning. We boarded a big orange school bus and went to Chicago. We saw ducks, pigs, and a farm. I saw how baby chicks come out of eggs. We saw a lake, a dam, and rain. When it thundered and lightened, it was really loud. I got scared. I saw a lot of strange machines, even a submarine. We went in a coal mine to see how they get coal. Then we saw coal burn. It burns bright and hot, just like wood. At lunch, we all ate in the cafeteria. Mr. Bartlett needed my help. I got napkins for the other children, just like a big boy.
Yeah.
I had a good time in Chicago. going back to the school past fields and homes, just like we have in Lexington, I fell asleep. Love and kisses, Bill.
Aw,
Uh,
that's cute.
cute.
Yeah. But
Well, will it?
that's the only one in there that I really take take pride in. The rest of them seem pretty juvenile.
Well, I know, Willie, you keep lots of things from your childhood. You know, what do you think of the writing?
Well, I think he's capturing what he experienced during that time, and you know, everybody writes different, and I think it expresses, well, what he went through and what he experienced.
Well, thank you. That's what it's intended to do, of course, and that's why I chose the ones that I did. Uh,
And
I was
that is a unusual style to do it, but
yes,
it tells your story.
it does. And I was 7 years old when I wrote that letter, and probably should put quote marks around the word "wrote" because I didn't really write it. I dictated my those letters the first couple of years to teachers or
Oh,
school personnel who would then write them down for me. So
oh,
it's I actually started writing my first letters when I was 9, first letters home.
So
okay.
of the 24 students, are they all different ages?
Within that span of 6 to 12, yes.
Okay. So how many were your age, roughly?
It would have varied a bit from year to year. I'm not really sure. Uh, my closest friends were my roommates, of course, and I would have known the others. But that's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to it.
So, you during this time period, so you couldn't go to public school. I mean, there were no accommodations that you needed. So, was this free?
No, it was very expensive, and I was very fortunate. I was born into a family that could afford to send me to school. In 1962, it cost $1,500 a year to go to Harvard. This cost $5,000 for roughly the same amount of time.
Wow.
And a school teacher in Kentucky in 1962 would have earned about $2,000 a year. I was extremely fortunate in being born to the parents I was born with. I've run into more than a few um, adults or the siblings of adults who realize that their parents couldn't afford to send them or their siblings. Mostly it's usually adults who have some perspective on it can realize that their siblings didn't get the same opportunities because their parents couldn't afford it. And I'm so grateful that my parents could afford it. I'm also grateful that my parents had the wherewithal to actually find me an educational setting that would be appropriate for me
And
because
do
there
you
were a lot
know
of people who
how?
didn't.
I'm
Do I know
sorry.
how what?
Do you know how that they found this school? Because it's not like you could just do an internet search, like we could
Right.
now.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. They sent me to a school in Lexington, and that school was affiliated with the University of Kentucky in some way. I'm not sure. And then, of course, the University of Kentucky had the College of Education, and they had a Department of Special Education at the time too. And it was through the Department of Education at UK, University of Kentucky, that they found um, this opportunity for me
Wow.
that way. Yeah.
And I know, so we'll go off the chronological kind of order, but knowing that you got your Roots of the Bluegrass award for writing, for playwriting, at the University of Kentucky, that just seems like a kind of full circle in a way of,
It does.
yeah, that just, went through my
I'm grateful
mind.
to you and to the Kentucky Theater Association for that opportunity. It was very nice.
Well, this is a really compelling story, and also, I think like it spotlights a terrible time of history for, for those who did not have parents that had the means to either search out and find the resource or the money if they did find it. And there were only two, I think you said. So, that's if there were 24 at the other one, that's only like not very many students if
Yeah,
you look at the whole US. So,
it really was. Now, things did change pretty rapidly. Uh, in the fall of 1962, the Fayette County Public Schools started a special education program. And when I came back to Lexington in 1966, I was considered for a school that had special education. My parents didn't put me in a special education program. Instead of putting me 1 year behind my age group, they put me 2 years behind, and I never went back into a special education setting. Um, Although I did try and teach special education many years later. Uh, so I was very fortunate in lots of ways. But in 1962, they started a special education program that expanded and grew in Fayette County. And then I believe it was 1964, Jefferson County started their special education program. And so there is special education everywhere now, uh, coast to coast. Some of them are private schools. Uh, the Cove School still exists. It's no longer in Evanston, Illinois. It's in Northbrook, Illinois now, also part of the Chicago area. And there are lots of opportunities for people to get special education, at least at the moment. Now, there seems to be a move to get rid of the United States Department of Education. And so it may be back on local school districts and states to provide special education. And that is a concern because there are a lot of people who can't afford what my parents did for me.
well, that would be definitely a setback, in my opinion, if that should happen. Um, so when you were with the students at the Coast School that had, different, so they weren't all having seizures or, like everybody had their own thing. Um, do you feel like that helped create an environment of understanding, or empathy that didn't exist outside of that? Or was there still like being looked at as different because you don't have what I have?
Oh no, there's a place in here where it talks about my lack of empathy for a fellow student and making him feel bad. And
Oh,
if I had some idea where it was, I would read it to you because it makes the point that we were all very human. We were typical 6, 7, and 8 years old. You know, if you're the low kid on the totem pole, you're still going to be treated poorly by your peers, and I treated some of my peers poorly.
I see.
Uh, so there was that. When I came back to Fayette County and entered a regular classroom, I was accepted as a regular member of the group. I don't remember ever being teased about special education or anything like that because I was never in a special education classroom again.
Right.
But I did see how other students who had special education, special needs, were treated when after I came back, and I didn't like it. It certainly gave me great empathy for other people, and I think my writing and my work has been around that line with great
Well,
empathy for
so
others.
you went on through school and you did well. Was college then always the goal?
It wasn't for my parents. Again, they didn't think I would be able to go to college, and they were very surprised, I think, when about my junior year, I started asking about college and wanting to go to college. And so we started, we did go to visit some schools. Um, I was 2 years behind, so I was in the same grade as my sister Laura. Laura went to Wellesley College, and I went to Transylvania. And I think both are good schools. I also, in future years, I went to the University of Virginia, got a degree there from the University of Kentucky, got another degree. So I had lots of opportunities to go to school and do well with an education. But it was not a foregone conclusion, and I think my parents were both pleased and shocked that I was able to go to college.
Well, what did you think? Did you always think you would be able to?
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah. I remember at the Cove School we would sit up. My roommates and I would get up in the mornings. We'd play some cribbage. We'd talk. We'd gossip. We'd talk about what we were planning on doing in the future. And uh, Tommy's dad, I think, was in real estate, and Steve's dad was a medical doctor in Hartford, Connecticut. Um, I forgot what David's dad did, but yeah, we just assumed that since our parents were successful, we'd be successful, and we would talk about where we would go to college or what we would grow up and be. We just assumed that was the way that the world worked, and we never considered the possibility we would not be able to go to college.
well, I think
Yeah,
that's fascinating.
it
That
is.
you put a group together and despite what everybody else might be looking in and seeing, they just believe that they're going to be successful because their role models, their parents were. And I mean, how much do you think that your mindset of that success being possible had to do with you actually achieving success?
I think it had everything to do with it. Um, I, one of my friends, when I came back to school here, was the son of a doctor, and he assumed he would be a doctor. But he had an older brother who had some learning difficulties, and he became a security guard. There's nothing wrong with being a security guard, but I think he just heard all his life, well, you've got some difficulties, you can't do that, and you can't go to college and you can't achieve this or that. We didn't hear those messages. And my parents and the teachers at the school kept their mouths shut about it.
Yeah.
They didn't tell us we couldn't be successful, so we became successful. And I
Wow.
just wish the same thing happened in public schools now.
Well, I kind of could see, just listening to the story, like that could be your play right there, of focusing on that aspect. But anyways, I find that interesting. So, I think for the listeners, a lot of them probably maybe don't think about or realize like, that special education didn't exist at a point in history. Um, and so for those kids, they just stayed home a lot of the times because there was no place for them. So I I mean, it's amazing to hear the the stories of people that defied the odds that came from times that, you know, didn't have the services. And now we have services. Um, but it still seems that some people fall through the cracks. So, you know, do you have any ideas on, I mean, is it better for people to go away and be schooled where they feel like success is possible and expected, or is public school the way to go?
I don't know. I can't really make those judgments. I wish I could. I think that people need as many opportunities to succeed as they can get. And sometimes we need to provide the assistance. Sometimes people just need to work it out for themselves. It's hard to say what the answer, the solution is, but I do think that encouraging people, believing in them is really important. And from what I've seen of your teaching and the way you talk about teaching, I know that you believe the same sort of thing. And the people that I really admire as teachers are the same way. They think give people the opportunity to succeed and they will succeed, and don't give them lots of negative attention and believe that failure is their inevitability, and they will succeed. You just have to give people positive encouragement and the opportunity that they need and the resources that they need. It might be as simple as having a wheelchair, or it might require years of occupational therapy. Whatever it takes is what people should be given.
So sometimes people write memoirs to heal. Sometimes it's to teach something. Um, what was it for you? One or both, or?
I wrote it because I needed to write it, but now that it's come out, excuse me, I think it becomes a way to tell people about the importance of special education, about the importance of providing support, and both emotional and in terms of functionality, whatever is needed to be able to succeed. And so it's become a bit of a message for me, I think now, a starting point, a way to say, this is what's possible. And this is where it came from. What happened to me could be what the future might be, or it might be something very different from that. I don't know.
What's the feedback been like from people that read your memoir?
Um, I don't know. Um, I really, I've really only gotten one response about it, um, and that was from my niece, who wrote me a very nice letter not long ago, saying that she had enjoyed reading it. She'd learned a lot about me and about um, the topics in the book, and so that was wonderful to get that response. There have been a couple of reviews online, and those have been nice too. They've been very complimentary, but no one goes into great detail about what they actually think. They just, I don't know. I don't know. I think if people read it, I think they will find a story that will capture their hearts, will make them stop and think about uh, the person they see on the street that may be having some issues with walking or talking or whatever, and maybe they'll stop and think a little differently about them, having read my story. I don't know. I certainly hope that that's the response.
Yeah, well, I hope that everybody that's listening to this episode will, they can get this on Amazon or,
They can, and I'm sure that there are other places as well. The the book is actually published um, by cyberwit.net, and so you can get it through that, which is also on an online source. I'm sure you could call the local bookstore and ask them to order it for you. Um, yeah, it's $15, so it's not real expensive, but I think it has an important message to impart.
Well, Willie, we will have to make a commitment that we will read and get some type of feedback to Bill.
Yes, I
Uh,
want to read it.
That would be wonderful. I would greatly appreciate that.
so, Bill, I know our time's running out here, but what was the hardest chapter to write?
I didn't really write it in chapter form.
Okay.
Uh, it's an epistolary, really. It's the letters I wrote home, probably make up the bulk of it, and then the Japanese styles of writing help convey the story as well.
Did
So,
you enjoy those? Like, that's a different type of writing that I imagine than you do most of the time.
oh, it's very much a different style of writing. I had never heard of haibun at all, and of course, I think everybody in like the fifth grade learns how to write a haiku, but
Yeah.
I wasn't very good at writing them. But now they help tell the story, and I think that's a really fascinating part of this. Um,
All right, Willie, last question you get to ask.
Well, I would say that you took can't and made can out of it.
Thank you.
And
I think you're right.
and okay, I do have a last question. If things were different, would would you have rather had the experience you had, or would you rather have gone to a regular school?
Oh, if I had just gone to a regular school, I wouldn't be here. I'd be in an institution, or I don't know where I would be. I've always felt like that the time I spent at the Cove School say literally saved my life, at least a quote unquote normal life, with opportunities to go to college, to uh, be successful, to be an educator, to do the various things I've done. I couldn't have done those if I had just gone to a regular school.
Okay.
I might have been a school safety officer, you know. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but the school gave me many opportunities that I never would have had otherwise. So I'm very grateful to the Cove School.
Okay.
Well, Bill, I want to thank you for sharing your story, your
Yes.
honesty and perspective today. The memoir is it's not only personal, but it helps us to see how far education has really come, especially special education, and why protections matter. So, to our listeners, thank you for joining us. And Bill, we hope you'll come back and, talk with us again sometime.
Thank you
Thank you.
both. I really
Thank you.
appreciate your time.